The sun rose gently over a quiet Zulu village nestled among rolling hills. Smoke coiled from the thatched huts as women prepared breakfast and children chased one another through the dusty path. Among the villagers lived an elderly widow known simply as Gogo Zola. Every morning she swept the front of her tiny hut. Every afternoon she fetched water despite her aching knees. Every evening before the sun disappeared behind the hills, she performed the same ritual again and again. She cooked enough food for two. She placed 2 plates on a small wooden table. She poured 2 cups of water. She pulled out 2 wooden chairs. Then she sat quietly, leaving the second chair empty. The children in the village will always laugh at her. They said, "She's talking to ghosts." Even some of the adults shook their heads to say, "Oh dear, Mama is old. Old age has finally taken her mind." But Gogo Zola never argued. She simply smiled, looked at the empty chair and whispered, "I am waiting, my son." No one in the village had ever seen the sun. No one even believed he existed anymore. But every single day, the chair waited. The next evening, nothing changed. 2 plates, 2 cups, 2 chairs, 1 old woman, 1 empty seat. Lindiwe finally asked, "Gogo, why do you waste food every day?" The old woman smiled and responded, "He promised me that one day he would come home before I stopped waiting." Lindiwe looked around. The neighbors burst into laughter. That promise is older than the mountains. But Gogo Zola carefully served the second plate as though someone was already walking home. The harvest season became difficult. Food was scarce. Baba Temba visited Gogo Zola. "Mother, from today, cook only 1 plate," he said. "Save your food. You have waited long enough." The old woman gently shook her head and responded, "My son has never broken his word." The villagers whispered, "She's feeding an empty chair while people are hungry." That evening, she placed the second plate on the table again. Outside, someone was quietly watching her house. Some days later, Gogo Zola became very sick. She could barely stand, yet before sunset, she struggled into the kitchen. She cooked, prepared 2 plates, pulled out 2 chairs. She smiled weakly. "If today is my last day, I will still be waiting." The village gathered outside her little house. Some cried, others silently stared at the empty chair. Then, just as darkness covered the village, footsteps echoed from the road. Everyone turned. A stranger was running toward the house. The stranger burst through the door. He dropped to his knees. "Mother," he said, "it's me, Subisiso." The old woman's eyes slowly opened. She smiled, the smile she had carried for years. Then she said, "I knew you would keep your promise, my son." Those were her last words. She never spoke again. Slowly, her hands became still. The little hut fell silent. Outside, the villagers bowed their heads. For the first time in many years, no one laughed at her again. No one whispered. Even the children who once mocked the old woman stood quietly, unable to hold back their tears. The funeral was held 3 days later. People came from nearby villages to honor Gogo Zola. Many remembered how they called her foolish. Many remembered laughing at the empty chair. Now they wished they could take those words back. After the burial, Baba Temba walked to Subisiso. Then he said, "My son, we judged your mother without knowing her story." Subisiso wiped his tears. Then he said, "You weren't the only one. I blamed myself every single day." The villagers gathered around Subisiso. Everyone wanted to know what had happened. Subisiso took a deep breath. Then he said, "When I was 12 years old, my mother and I traveled to another village. On our way home, armed robbers attacked the road. We ran different directions. I searched for her until nightfall, but I never found her. A family from another province found me alone. They took me in and raised me as their own son. As I grew older, I searched for my mother everywhere. I returned many times, but every clue led nowhere. Then last month, an old trader recognized my mother's name. He told me she was still alive. I left everything behind. I traveled day and night. I only prayed that I wouldn't be too late. The entire village fell silent. Lindy Way covered her face and wept. I laughed at her, yet she never stopped believing. A few days later, Lindy Way entered Gogo Zola's little hut to clean it. Hidden beneath the bed was an old wooden box. Inside were dozens of neatly folded letters. Every year, Gogo Zola had written one letter to Sobisiso. She never knew where to send them to, so she kept every single one. Lindy Way unfolded the first letter with trembling hands. It read, "My dear son, wherever you are, I pray you are alive. Your food is waiting. Your cup is waiting. Your chair is waiting." The second letter ended the same way. So did the third and the fourth. Year after year. The final letter was written just a week before Gogo Zola died. It read, "My son, if these old eyes never see you again, do not blame yourself. I have already forgiven time, but I will still set your place at the table because a mother's hope never dies." Not a single person could hold back their tears. From that day forward, no one in the village ever laughed at another person's pain. They had learned that every scar hides a story, every silence hides a battle, and every act of hope deserves respect. Months later, Sobisiso repaired his mother's little hut. He fixed the leaking roof, he painted the old walls, but he never removed the second chair. Visitors often asked him, "Why do you still keep it there?" He would smile and answer, "Because hope should always have a place to sit." Years passed. Children who had never met Gogo Zola would stop outside the little house and point at the two chairs. One day, a little boy asked Lindy Way, "Why are there always two chairs?" Lindy Way smiled through gentle tears. "One chair is for one person who is here. The other is for love that never gave up." And that is why we never judge a story before we know the ending.